Hi everyone, Georgia here from Deburi Art Workshops, and today we are looking at how to kickstart your creative practice by making your very own concertina sketchbook. Okay everyone, so in this series of videos called Kickstarting Your Creative Practice, we're going to be looking at lots of different ways that you can start making. I teach lots of different workshops about making artists and making creative practices. So whether it's the first time you've ever made art, whether you never thought you'd make art and at the moment you're just incredibly bored and you need to get some creating going, or whether you're a fully fledged artist and you're looking for a different perspective on things, these videos are hopefully going to help you. The first thing that we're going to be doing is making our very own sketchbook, and the reason why I really enjoy doing this as part of my creative practice, I'm a bookbinder, so it really helps me ground myself in what I'm making. The other thing it does is allows you to have full autonomy over the book that you are making. If you want a book full of black paper, you can have it. If you want pastel paper, watercolour paper, an A5 book, an A1 book, whatever you want to do, as long as you are binding it yourself, you can make it. So I'm going to grab the books that we're making, show you them, and then we're going to get over to making our books. Okie dokie, so these are the kind of books that we're going to be making today. This is the one that I show you in our example, so this is still plain, and this is a concertina sketchbook, so you can view all of your work at once. And the reason why I really like these as a project starting sketchbook is because you can see where you go from beginning to end. So in this video as well, we're also going to be looking at this sketchbook, which is one I'm working on at the moment, and we're going to do a little bit of a sketchbook tour at the end, and I'm going to tell you about all the things that are in this. And this is the back end of the sketchbook, so not very much going on in there, but this is something that I am going to be using as the Kickstarter for my creative practice in this particular project. So you're going to be making along with me when we are making these books. So as you can see, this is quite full already, and we're going to be looking at that a little bit later. But let's start off by making our own creative practice sketchbooks. The first thing you are going to need for your sketchbook is a nice piece of paper. This is going to be the paper that makes up your front and back cover. So these can be different, they can be the same, however you like, but you need a piece that is bigger than your book for each side. So for example, this book is A5, or it's just slightly smaller than A5, so I need a piece of A4 for the front cover and a piece of A4 for the back cover. One of my favourite things to use for this is old wrapping paper. You can use Christmas paper. This is a nice thick paper from the Rifle Paper Company, which I really love. All my planners are from there, they are fantastic. But you can also use things like newspaper, you could use painted paper, anything you like that is going to make a nice front cover. So once you've got that, you're also going to need yourself your cover board. Now this is the board that you're going to make your cover and back cover from, so it needs to be fairly sturdy. This is a piece of mount board that I have cut down. We'll go through how to do that later, but you could also use a piece of recycled cardboard as long as it is fairly thick and fairly sturdy, because this is what's going to keep your book safe. Then you're going to need a ruler. Any ruler will do. This is a bookbinding ruler, and the reason that it is a specific bookbinding ruler is because the measurements go all the way up to the end rather than having a little gap like a lot of rulers do. But you don't need one of those, just any old ruler will do. As we often do with artwork, you're going to need yourself a pencil. This is just for marking out outlines, so any old pencil is fine. A pen, if it's nice and light, maybe not an ink pen, but something like that will work well. Some glue. A glue stick is probably your best bet here. We're not going to go too into detail about kinds of glues for bookbinding because this isn't the session for that. We're just making our book to start our practice, but a glue stick will work. If you've not got that, then something like a thin watered down PVA is also good. You will also need a scalpel or a pair of scissors. This is going to be for cutting down our book board or cutting down the pieces of paper that you're going to need for your book. A guillotine might also work. So basically something to cut down your paper, and make sure if you're using a scalpel that you're also using a safety ruler and a cutting mat to keep your blade nice and sharp and to stop you from slipping. Finally, we are going to need our paper for our book. Again, this can be any size you like, this can be any paper you like, and this is the benefit of making your own sketchbook. I've got a nice kind of yellowed paper here. I'm not sure what kind it is, it was donated to me, but it's got a beautiful pattern of line work on it, so I thought this would make quite an interesting book, and I know it is good for pastels, and that is a lot of what my practice is going to be. So choose yourself a paper that is suitable as well. In this book you can choose papers that are different. It will just be a case of working out what order you want to put them together, and that is all you're going to need. So pause this video. On the next screen I'm going to show you everything in a list. Go and grab your supplies and we're going to get started. Okay, now we've got everything, we're going to get on to making our very first ever sketchbook for this series. First of all, you're going to need your pieces of paper, you're going to need your pencil, your glue and your ruler. Now, this is a really easy method of making a book, so if you don't understand it, rewind a couple of times just to watch over, but I'm sure everyone will get it. You're going to start off with a piece of your paper. This can be any piece you want, it doesn't matter. And you're going to take your ruler and we're going to mark, if you can pick up your ruler, you're going to mark what is essentially nearly a finger's width on one side of your paper. So I'm going to mark about 2 centimeters, just so I've got some extra wiggle room in case I need it. So take your ruler and mark 2 centimeters. You'll notice, as I said, with my bookbinding ruler, the measurements go all the way up to the edge, so you can line it up with your paper, but this isn't necessary. Now, we are going to fold along this line that we've marked here. So take your ruler, place it up against your lines, and you're going to be easier at this because you've probably not got silly nails like I have, but you're going to pick up the corner of your paper and fold it over. This is just going to make the strip for our concertina sketchbook. Now we're going to have to do that again, and then I'll show you how to attach them. So basically you're going to want to do this with every single piece of paper that you've got. Okay, now we've got all our folded pages, we're going to start assembling our book block. And the book block is basically just all the pages together without the front cover. So I'm going to put down a secondary piece of scrap paper just so you can see what I'm doing a little better. You don't have to do this, but it might be worth doing to protect your side. You're going to take yourself one of your pieces of paper, and along this tab here, you're going to apply some glue. You want to do that on the inside of the fold. So this is the outside of the fold, you're going to apply your glue on the inside of that fold. So take your glue stick and you want to apply a generous amount all the way across, and this is what's going to provide the structure of your book. You're then going to take a second page, slot it in to the tab of the previous page, line it up so it sits flush, and fold that tab down. Make sure you're pressing nice and firmly so that your book lines up. This is then going to create the first fold in our concertina book. Now, all you need to do is flip that piece over, and as you can see, we've got another glue tab here. So once again, you're going to apply your glue to that glue tab nice and generously. Take your next page on the side without the glue tab, slot it in, line it up, fold over your glue tab and press down. And as you can see, we are beginning to get our sketchbook. If you flip it over to the other side, you'll see we've got much cleaner seams. So I'm going to go ahead and do this with all my other tabs until I get to the end of my book now, and then I'll show you how to end your book and to apply your cover. Okay, now we've prepared our book blocks, and remember, they can be however long you want them to be. This book isn't too long. I've made much longer ones before, but whatever you want to do. You will notice you have got one leftover glue tab. Now, take your scalpel, your pair of scissors, or whatever you happen to have to hand, and you're just going to trim that off along the fold line, and that will give you a nice even end page to your book, just like that. You can do that, as I say, with a scalpel or with your scissors, whatever you've got to hand. Now it's time to apply our covers, so we're going to pop this to one side and get making with those. You want to begin with your piece of cover board, and this is the card that you are going to use to make the sturdy part of your cover. So the bit that's going to give your book strength and resilience for when it gets chucked in your bag, taken for a walk and on a journey. This needs to be slightly larger than your book block. So you're going to measure your book block, and then you want to have at least 3 millimeters either side in each section. I like making concertina books so they've got a little bit more wiggle room on the ends, but you don't have to do that. You can make it even all the way round if you would like. So because this paper is A5, it's ever so slightly smaller than A5 because of the fact that we've got our little glue tab. So you want this cover board to be slightly bigger than that. So you could make it A5, you could make it even bigger, but you just want a few millimeters around each edge to overhang your book block to give you a bit of wiggle room. You want 2 of these, one for your front cover and one for your back cover, and this is where our patterned paper comes in. Once you have your patterned piece of paper, the first thing you're going to want to do is decide what bit you want your front cover to be. So I like the fact that this flower is on there, so I'm going to try and keep that on my front cover. You're going to flip your piece of paper over, and this is where we're going to begin marking out where we need to cut. Place your piece of coverboard as central as you can, and you're going to take a pencil and draw around your outline. We are going to stick this down as well, but the outline is useful to have just in case you jog yourself and your cover board moves. So when gluing, this might be teaching you how to suck eggs a little bit, but it's always useful for bookbinding. You're going to glue outwards, and this ensures that all of your work is nice and glued. Make sure you've got lots of glue in the corners, and that when you are sticking your page down, it is as flat as it can possibly be. So I'm now going to flip that over, line it back up with my markings and stick that down. Give it a good press to make sure you've got no air bubbles on the other side, and you might want to just flip it over to make sure it's adhered nicely. I think it has on mine. So we can go back over to this side. You are then going to take your ruler and your pencil and mark out a ruler's width on either side of your book. This is going to allow us to fold it together without there being too much overhang of the paper. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So fold, not fold, what am I talking about? Rule your lines all the way down your paper, all the way around the outside of your book. Then you're going to take your scissors or your scalpel, whichever you have to hand, and cut out these outlines. So you've got your cover board with an overhanging piece of paper around either side. This doesn't have to be too neat. You're not going to see it in the end, but the better you can cut, the better your edges are going to look. Now we've got our piece nice and cut out, we've got to do a couple of final measurements before we finish off our books. You're going to take a ruler from your corner to your corner on one of the edges of your cover board. You then want to mark around 3 millimeters, or around the width of your cover board plus 1 millimeter. This means when we fold our paper over, you're not going to have a naked corner where the paper doesn't quite meet. So for me, my cover board is 2 millimeters thick, so I need to make mine around 3 millimeters. If you're using something like a thicker corrugated cardboard, you're going to need that to be bigger. And I do apologise about the lighting situation we've got going on, but I'm not going to complain about the sun being out, so we're going to have to deal with that. Once you have marked out all your edges, you can just about see them for me. You are going to either freehand this or take a ruler, whichever you find easiest, and you need to mark that across at about a 45-degree angle. Again, don't worry too much about it being perfect. This is only your sketchbook to get you started. At the end of this series, we're going to look at making an artist book, which is where we'll consider all of these things much more in detail. But for now, we can just eyeball it a little bit. You're then going to cut off these corners like you would almost if you were wrapping a present. Righty-ho, this is where our gluing comes in, and this is how we're going to make our front covers look nice and neat. You need to apply glue to the tabs of your cover paper. Make sure you fold it over nice and tightly, pull it towards you and down, and this is going to give you a nice firm front cover. You want to do opposite sides first, so always both the short sides together and both the long sides together. This will make sure you've got even tension on both of the sides, and you'll have a nice crisp front cover without any bubbles to mark it. So once you've done both of your short sides, you're going to do both of the long sides, and as you can see, when we flip that over, we've got a nice crisp front cover to look at. Another thing you can do to make sure your books are nice and neat is you'll see a little overhang on this section of the paper. You can use your nail or a pair of scissors, if you don't have any nails, to crush that little fold over, and that will mean you've got a nice neat corner when you're making your book. Okay, now we have one of our covers nice and neat. We're going to do the same thing with our second piece of cover board and then attach them to our book block. Now we're going to attach our book block to our front covers. For this section, you'll need your book block, your front covers. Oh, I've knocked my cactus over. You will also need a piece of scrap paper, and you will need your glue stick. To attach your book block to your covers, you're going to take one of your ends, slide in that piece of scrap paper, and apply glue to the edges of that page. We're going to end up losing this page, but you can always add extra things to it to make it a little bit more exciting. I'll show you how I've done that on another book in just a moment. You're now going to take your cover board, pop it down so you can see exactly where you need to pop your book, place it as central as you can, and press down firmly. You might want to open your book up so you're on the page and rub out all of those creases so you've got a nice clean end paper for your book. You're going to do exactly the same thing on the other side. Make sure your edges line up nicely, just like that. Give it a good firm press, and you have your concertina sketchbook with all your different pages inside that you can use. Now I'm going to quickly show you one way that you can make these sections a little bit more exciting. Ooh, I need to rub mine down a little bit more, and then we will go through our sketchbook tour. So now we have our book finished up, I'm going to show you one way that you can make your end papers look a little bit more exciting, so you've not got just a plain page like the rest of your book. So that will begin our sketchbook tour 2. One way you can make your end papers a little bit more interesting is by covering them up with something. These are vintage cigarette cards that I got from a vintage shop in Winchester, and I've just cut them down and applied them in different layers to my end papers, and that covers up that white page. You can always draw or paint or whatever your practice may lead you to on that page, but I quite like having a different kind of end paper. You could also use a painted paper or a piece of paper that you have marbled, maybe something like that. You could use another piece of wrapping paper, either the same one for consistency or something different to change it up a little bit on that section as well. So you can always personalize your book even more. Now begins the start of our sketchbook tour. So each day that we have been in self-isolation from the joy that is COVID-19, I've been going out quickly for my exercise that is allocated by the British government, making sure to observe things like social distancing, all that good fun stuff. But I have been paying a lot of attention to nature. Now my practice focuses a lot on nature, so this is something that I find very, very personal. So every time I've been going out, I've been taking a photo of something that I've seen on that walk and coming back and illustrating it and writing about it. And this is acting like a anxiety relieving art journaling process for me. So this is the practice we're going to be looking at when referring to my practice for this particular session of workshops. So to begin with, I've layered some paper down. I've then done some illustrations, making note of colour. This was the first day where we were looking at some grape hyacinth. On the second walk day, I've included dates here as well, so when I look back in the future I will know. I've included some pressed flowers because all of the flowers are coming out this time of year. I've also included another cigarette card, which was one I found, and it was about the growth of plants, so I thought that would be quite a relevant one. I've also included a little scrap of the paper that I used for the front cover in the top section to make that look a little bit more interesting. We then have a page with some oyster catchers. This isn't a photo that I took on that particular day, but I thought it would be nice to include. We saw a pair of oyster catchers in the creek. This is a dry point etching I completed of a feather, and this is on some gorgeous red onion skin paper. So this is handmade paper that I bought a little while ago, and a simple etching on top. We also have a layered page with some tracing paper, a feather that I collected stuck in, and the beauty of the Concertina sketchbook is you can draw things over multiple pages, like this. So the next section we have is this little ringed dove that was on a day that was particularly bird-filled. So I'm going to close that section up now. Ooh. This is a series of flowers that we saw on another walk that we went on. So these are three-cornered garlic, which is a kind of allium, and it's a kind of wild garlic. So this is a photo I took of them, and then I've been doing some little sketches in a very loose kind of style of drawing, which I find really helps when I'm making a sketchbook to keep me kind of free and not worried about exactly what the outcome looks like. We've then got a lovely black-headed gull. The water is so clear at the moment that you can see the little feet swimming underneath the surface. And for the final page, I'm nowhere near finished in this sketchbook yet, as you can see. For the final page that I've done so far, we've got some string of hearts. I didn't manage to go on a walk this particular day, so I thought I would represent something from nature inside my home. And I've got a gorgeous string of hearts that you might have seen at the start of this video on the bookshelf. So this again is a dry point etching printed here, and then this was the illustration originally. So once again, as a reminder, with Concertina sketchbooks you can look at all of these pages in one go, and that is one of my favourite things about this kind of sketchbook, especially if you're just starting an artistic practice, as it will really help you see your progression throughout the work. So we're going to head over to the end screen now, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about these future sessions. Okay everyone, I hope you enjoyed that particular video and learning how to make your own sketchbook for your creative practice. As I say, this concertina book is going to be one of a few different sketchbook types we learn how to make. At the end, we're going to be learning how to make a sewn bound sketchbook, but this one I thought would be a nice easy starter, being as there's no embroidery skills required. And next session we are going to be looking, losing my page there. Next session we're going to be looking at what to look at when choosing a theme for your creative practice. A theme is really important because it will ground you in what you are making. Mine evidently is nature, but we're going to be talking about how to choose your theme and how to research that particular theme when you are making. So I will see you next time. Make sure you subscribe, like and share this video if it was something that you found interesting. Anyone who also might like this, be sure to send it on their way, and feel free to support me on Patreon if you are able to do so for more workshops. I'm at Deburia everywhere, and I will see you guys later. Bye!